the Cockroach Janata Party managed to get their primary demand sort of accepted by the government, and the government had to concede to the Gen Zs finally. I believe you also went to Jantar Mantar during the protest. Tell us your assessment of the CJP, their protest, and the success they got.
Well, let me put it this way. I congratulate the government for, agreeing to the resignation of the education minister. Because let us understand, when the farmers had their agitation, it lasted for a year or so, and 783 of them were killed. Now, in this case, it lasted for 35 days. So the government has acted faster. In other words, the government has learned from the past. So that's a plus point. And another thing is that at some point, the government told the Cockroach Janata Party that whether they would agree to Dharmendra Pradhan getting another assignment. And the youngsters said, nothing doing. So I think, they also should be congratulated for being consistent and persistent, and on the whole, keeping their language very measured. Unlike, that BJP MP Kangana, the honorable MP, who I was reading, said abusive things about, quote, Hindu women, unquote, who had gone to the Jantar Mantar. Now, her words are so abusive that I refuse to repeat them. So, on the whole, I think the government has acted right, though with a delay. But, these are matters of human nature, and we should not expect immediate action on the part of human beings who are in power.
Right. Let's look at some of the other aspects that came along besides, of course, the main victory of the CJP. One of the disturbing aspects was the brutality of the Delhi police and the visuals that we saw from Bihar as well. Delhi police brutally thrashing students using pellet guns. There is enough and more evidence to suggest that pellet guns were used against student protesters. And just yesterday, you had this visual come from Bihar where a policeman was seen firing an AK-47 against protesters. These visuals are being debated highly around the world, and the picture it paints about India and its police forces. How do you see this case of police brutality, sir?
Well, unfortunately, the Delhi police has resorted to a level of brutality which is most unnecessary and I would say most unfortunate, because the youngsters who are protesting, they were by and large peaceful. In fact, the story is that, and Delhi police also confirms it, some criminal elements, Delhi police has given a figure of 2,800 or more, had got into the place and they were sort of, trying to create trouble. Then, strangely enough, some persons on behalf of the Delhi police have discredited the students for letting these people in. But the students were not controlling who is coming in and who is going out. So the Delhi police that was doing it. So I don't think the protesters can be charged with asking criminal elements to come in. And another thing in this regard is that I can share the photo with you later. There was a photo of a truck filled with lots of stones parked near the site. And my question is, if it was put there by the youngsters, the protesters, Delhi police should have removed it. If it was put there by criminal elements, then again, Delhi police should have removed it. So the question is, why is it that Delhi police did not remove the truck immediately? In fact, many people send messages to the Delhi police giving photographs and all that. but still the truck was there for quite some time. And we also should factor in that a new police commissioner was appointed, well, what shall I say, without giving any notice to the incumbent. And then, Delhi police also practically kidnapped the fasting Wangchuk, you know what I mean? So Delhi police could have acted with more, what shall I say, um, in a more measured way, in a more professional way. So let us hope that Delhi police will learn from this. And you mentioned about pellet guns. In fact, 5 names have come to my notice. One is Sheikh Irshad Mansouri, 25 years, Nutan Topo, lady, 32, Prashant Singh, 28, Sahil Loshap, 19. Well, I mean, 4 names came to me, or maybe there is one more name. But the point is, these names are there, and the media, our investigative media, should go to them and talk to them. And also, some MPs, including John Britas, were prevented from, going to a hospital and meeting some of the injured ones. That is not on. An MP has every right to visit somebody who is injured. So Delhi police should learn some lessons and act better. Let's hope so that they will do that.
So, two more aspects before I move on to the other subjects. One is the fact that this was India's first Instagram revolution and the first big Gen Z protest that we saw on the streets. Now, those supporting the government, one of the main arguments that they've been putting forth since the beginning is that, Gen Z coming onto Indian streets and they immediately point to our neighborhood, saying that look what happened in Nepal and look what happened in Bangladesh. And there was this fear instead that this Gen Z is up to something, some nefarious activities are on. Do you believe that this is also a moment for the government to step back and start looking at dissenters, especially Gen Z, on merit rather than being paranoid about the fact that this could lead to a bigger change and revolution and coup in line with what we saw in our neighborhood?
I agree with you that anyone who argues that what happened in Bangladesh or what happened in Nepal could have happened in India is being paranoid, and also they are saying it perhaps with an axe to grind. That is, they wanted to justify the police brutalities. So I'm sorry to say I cannot take such an argument seriously. And only thing is that this is not the end of the story. We are told that elections are going to be held for student bodies in Delhi University and maybe elsewhere. And some of the youngsters who took part in the demonstrations at Jantar Mandir expect to cash in on that. Incidentally, did you notice that the universities came out with an advisory to their faculty and students? Don't go anywhere near Jantar Mandir for the sake of your safety, as though the faculty and the students should be told about their safety by the university. In fact, I hold that the university authorities should not have come out with such an advisory, because let's look at it logically. If 10 people saw that advisory, well, 1 or 2 of them were never going to go in any case. But as regards the 8 others, the tendency will be, okay, I am told not to go, so let me go and find out. You know what I mean? So even psychologically, it did not make any sense. Obviously, the university authorities wanted to curry favor with the government. Now, that's not the job of the university.
Right. And the final aspect in this is the education reform itself. The Prime Minister has announced a task force led by Nandan Nilekani, and they've been asked to come up with a comprehensive plan that looks at overhauling the education system and addressing the core demand of the students, which is fixing the broken education system of our country, because it's pretty much evident that our education system is not even a quarter of what some of the biggest countries in the world have, and there is a genuine crisis on that front. What are your expectations from this task force, and do you believe that something meaningful could come out in terms of reforms for our education system?
Well, I personally welcome the appointment of Nilakani and others, and a task force is necessary. But let me ask a question. There was a Radhakrishnan report that was in 2024. Now, what has happened? Because sometimes governments, not only in India, have the habit of appointing an investigation or inquiry team, get the recommendations, and they are just filed away. No consequential action is taken. So that's point number one. In this case, let's hope there will be consequential action. Point number two is that the Nilagandi Commission should examine whether there is real need for NEET, because Tamil Nadu has reservations. So that fundamental question has to be asked and answered. I'm not prejudging what the answer should be. Third thing is that, 180 questions, multiple choice questions, have to be answered by the NEET candidates. And there is shortage of time. I think it's 3 hours. Now, let me put it this way. 180 questions and 180 minutes. So within 1 minute, you have to make a choice. Now, your choice can depend on your knowledge. It can depend on your ability to recall something which you have learned, and also, what I call rote learning. You learned it by heart, so to say. Now, this is not necessary. In fact, don't make our exams so nerve-wracking. Instead of 180, let them answer 100 questions. Point number. Next is, I have some reservations about these multi-choice questions, because look at it. If there are 4 choices, then I will get the right. I have 25% chance of getting the right one. So that is not very sensible. And another thing is that, there should be some occasion for the students to demonstrate their reasoning ability and also their writing ability. And another thing is that, you know, uh, in this case, it's very quantitative, because the subjects are physics, chemistry, biology, and botany. Very technically speaking, you can score 0 in chemistry and you can still be in. Does it make any sense? So I believe the whole system has to be very radically, changed. And let us hope Nilakani Commission will do that. And they should consult with the students and the teachers. It's very important. In fact, they should consult with CAG, Cockroach Janata, CJP, Cockroach Janata Party. Let not there be any false pride. You know what I mean?
Sir, you've always maintained that India is a self-correcting democracy. You say that India, while there are flaws and the things that need rectification, at the end of it, India is a self-correcting democracy. When you look back at this protest and the way the government handled it, and the way it was covered globally, and the way the world sort of perceived and interpreted the crackdown on student protesters, do you think it is in line with that, or do you think it only solidifies the narrative that India is not a safe country for dissenters under the current government?
Well, let me put it this way. Partly, this demonstrated that India is a self-correcting democracy. Because if the government had acted the same way as it acted in regard to the farmers' agitation, what would have happened? Do you know that metro stations in Delhi, 17 or 18 of them were closed? Tell me, how long can you keep the metro stations closed? So that way it is self-correction. But this self-correction could have come much faster. In fact, one I would have expected from Prime Minister Modi, who has got such a high reputation for doing his own thinking, not being dependent on others, what to do, to tell him what to do, I would have expected faster action.